are there like specific components of the or framework for the narrative? And is there a narrative example that has stood out to you that was particularly impactful or inspiring that really captured the objective or the problem of one of the customers that you all are serving?
The format is generally like it's either like a 6-page narrative, or it is a press release and a series of frequently asked questions. And in the press release, you have to have customer quotes, even if those customers don't exist, because really you need to actually almost like simulate how a customer would react. And by doing that, you really try to put yourself in the customer's shoes. You always have to state the problem first before you apply a solution. So the narrative is always about, okay, this is something that we have strong conviction there is a problem that could be done better, and then these are all the possible solutions around that. But then you question even the way you go about it. So it's really about the mental model around that. And then the FAQs goes into more detail, but then there is a part of that which is kind of the harsh FAQ, where you're asking really, really hard question to yourself. So there is no elephant in the room, and this absolutely disarming introspection in a way is what actually puts people in the right frame of mind. It really creates trust. And so we created the memo center, we created a bunch of guidelines, we created a lot of tools for people to kind of get used to this. And then we review them together. So there is a lot of kind of, in a way, peer mentoring and a lot of learning by doing. We've done initially the initial digital strategy, where we decided to end up building a set of foundational platforms, like an identity and access management platform, an API platform, a web serving platform, a mobile platform, observability, incident management, etc. We ended up there, and that was one of the first, actually one of the best narratives, by actually asking ourselves, what is our promise to our customers? The promise to our customer is really a contract, is a service level, it's something that we need to stand behind. And therefore, if I want customers to be able to log on safely in one place with a single set of credentials and across websites, and they want to deal with their data in a certain way, then I will need certain features that actually meet an outcome expectation. The outcome expectation is really like, I want to be safe, I want to be secure, I don't want to have any steps that don't make any sense, and so forth. So, and then why do you need an API platform? Well, because services need to be available. Today, you can't afford to have downtime. There is no scheduled downtime. That doesn't make any sense anymore. If someone sends you like a scheduled downtime banner of some sort, you have to be skeptical about the processes behind the scenes. And therefore, services need to protect themselves. And the protection, I always say that if you want your service levels to be respected, or your values to be respected, you kind of have to enforce them yourself. You can't, respect that does not come from the benevolence of the others. That's not a good winning formula. Respect comes from your own strength. And therefore, the service needs to protect themselves. And that's why an API platform will provide protection for all the services that are behind it, and go on and so on and so forth. It's always the pattern of what is the job to be done, or what is the problem you're trying to solve. What is your outcome expectation, which is what you expect as a customer, which sets your service levels. And then around those service levels come the functional and non-functional requirements, and that's how you build software. So if you progress with this mental model and with this narrative, problems are really easy to break down into components. And then you generally end up with something that is maybe closer to the truth of what you want to build, but then you need to keep yourself, with that level of flexibility that we talked about. And so you componentize it, you make it flexible, you make it rapidly deployable, and just rinse and repeat.
Are there other practices that you found to help the engineering organization better, I guess, natively learn and understand the business part of software and like sort of the natural direction where things are going? Like, are there other tools or questions that help scale that out to all of the different teams or components of the organization?
One thing that we instituted that ended up being quite successful was we have a weekly operational meeting where we ask teams to be there to review their incidents together. So there is a completely blameless culture. We go down into like the 5 whys, and we do all these techniques in order to really go to root cause. But then we also kind of, select randomly among among the services those who are actually asked to just present their metrics. And that actually creates a culture in which, first of all, you need to have metrics, otherwise you would have nothing to present. And the fact that it's random, it kind of forces you to read those metrics and to kind of have them always in front of you. In fact, sometimes I measure, like how good a team is in kind of understanding their service by how long it takes them to kind of pull up their dashboard. If they need to go into emails and find the link and they take 5 minutes later they have it, means that they really don't use it all the time. So that, those that are just screen share right away, then it means that they were probably already looking at that. And then you look at latency, you look at the response time, you look at every metric. But then it's not only the technical metrics, it's also the business metrics. And so you look at your churn rate, you look at adoption, you look at how the various cohorts have different patterns of usage, etc. And I think there is kind of the other insight that the operational metrics and the business metrics are kind of really two sides of the same coin, where they really drive each other, and you can't optimize just for one. By making that part of the conversation, I think that kind of changes the perspective of the engineer, which starts to be used to talk about okay, now I have sort of a mirror, or I have a window in front. And by the way, in all the bad habit of in the old IT world was being rejecting change. Like, oh my God, they're asking me to change, because business people, sometimes they have more visibility on the clients and then they send a lot of conflicting instructions. But when you start actually looking at those metrics, those change of directions, they start to make sense also to the engineers. And so back to your metaphor, to the metaphor of the asteroid field, imagine if you don't have a window, and if you're a passenger back then with no windows and you hear all this shaking, you think that the pilot is drunk. But then if you have a window, which you actually see the metrics, you see the guy avoiding all the obstacles, then you think the guy is a genius. And so it changes your perspective completely. So that's why for the engineer to have visibility into the business metrics is crucial, because it makes your attitude to change completely different.